So the call, I won't be doing their teacher stuff today, so I'm expecting a lot of calls like that one. So yes, the numbers are still going up. It's all about the wastewater. That's apparently been okay, but now they finally linked the Warkworth toilet and they found the case. And I just really wish they would have a podium for the wastewater guy. I mean, how accurate and how much can they triangulate about this wastewater? It is fascinating. On the other, I guess, good news front, we have the vaccination is cranking up again, so that's good. It does seem like there's not a zero amount of people who may have got saline instead of a vaccination. That is a bummer, because so saline's just salt water. It's what you use in a placebo trial, actually. You'd use something like saline. Obviously, saline and the vaccine look the same. But what can you say? So this is not the first time it's happened, but it's probably the first time in New Zealand that we know about. But yeah, our whole vaccine numbers, I'll put a graphic of the ministry's official vaccine numbers showing that our second dose is way higher than our first dose, which doesn't really make sense. How do you get we're doing well on the second dose but not so well on the first dose? And I think, I haven't heard an explanation, but I know when I booked, it was really hard to book the first dose. It was prompting you, how about that second dose? So that didn't seem to make sense much either. So anyway, maybe it's something to do with that. So we've been giving saline to some, maybe. I think they just couldn't reconcile or find the saline around. So yeah, I mean, that is a little bit of a worry. And I think there's more news that maybe some people got an over-diluted amount and there's a bit more saline going missing. So anyway, I guess that's the value also of having a 2-dose vaccination, is that, well, at least you got one. And we could probably, it looks like we're heading toward a 3-dose booster, which is good, because yeah, then the difference between 1 and none seems bad. The difference between 1 and 2 less bad, and I assume the difference between 2 and 3 is not as bad as the others. So we will see. But still watching Australia. They've basically got to 1,000 in New South Wales, so as expected and predicted. It's 900 and something or other, but 770 of those are what they call mystery cases, I think. So they don't know where these have cropped up, and I think there's about 120 under investigation. So I'm not sure if they're officially waving the white flag or we're just going to count case numbers now. But that's what most other places seems to have gone to when they start getting out of control. Still really don't know what their lockdown is like. I think they're allowed to do a fair few things. I mean, we're not really permitted to do most things, so So I think for all the planning and all the ministerial involvement and discussion about the Trans-Tasman bubble, like they're just like us, and so we have to make sure their response and their protocols and their measures are going to be like us, then the travel bubble is allowable. I think we're finding that was that's not the case, and I'm not sure if it's mainly on their side telling us maybe some little porkies, or on our side, or both incompetence on both fronts. It's really unclear, so I think I'm getting more messages about what's happening at the home learning thing. I hope they survive. And so yeah, so it's really a difficult thing. To know what to do there, because we've got into a lockdown which apparently Sydney has, but they haven't really. And then so their Prime Minister, and it's always really interesting how their Prime Minister, he seems to be able to attack their premiers, but then when they ask for help, he says, no, that's your problem. So, yeah. So he came out and attacked us, which seemed like not the greatest timing in the world. I mean, I think even a lot of people here who want a critical view on what's happening in the government are thinking, now, yeah, it's good to be critical, but maybe not now. Let's just try and bottle it for a little bit, and then we can go into the tribal warfare afterwards. But maybe not now. So anyway, shots fired. ScoMo, their Prime Minister, he comes out and says, when we go into lockdown, they just can't do that. And I don't know. We have a perception that the Australians are maybe a little bit arrogant when it comes to us. And I think, if anything, I'm not sure if other people feel the same, but when you hear that, you think, when someone says you can't do it, we're like, oh yeah, we can. In fact, we will, and we're going to crush it. And we're in COVID crushing mode. And I think for the most part, people have been pretty calm around here. I would say mask wearing in public is probably something we can go up on, but people are generally keeping their space and stuff, which is good. So yeah, so he's come out and said they can't do that. There's no way you can do that. So I think I don't know if he's trying to, but the nails are going in the coffin of the travel bubble, because clearly they're not like us. What we've seen in Sydney is it's probably a mitigated disaster, but it still is a disaster. The response from Sydney compared even to the other premiers in the other states in Australia has been spectacular. RPM has been calling them out at the press conferences, like, look at what's happening there. We don't want to be like that. And I think we all can see that. Yeah, we agree. We've seen the photos and pictures. Nobody's really been talking much about Fiji, but I think Fiji is probably another example of disaster zone which haven't had a response that would be similar to ours. So ScoMo's come out firing, saying you can't do that. And then I saw the Tourism Minister of Australia has come on saying, yeah, we've got to open this travel bubble because we've got to come over there. And I think, what? I mean, get a grip. I think they just don't seem to get it. No, we're expecting a long, slow crushing of the curve. We want zero cases, no new clusters, no unlinked, no genetic, we need to have a genetic link to each case. So we're playing in different areas. I mean, I think it was good they opened the bubble for a while, and I think that a lot of people got to visit family. All this stuff about, we need tourism travel. I don't know. I think a lot of people are thinking really hard about going overseas for any reason, apart from they really have to go nowadays. I don't know many people that are going on holidays per se without thinking really carefully about it. One place you can go, which is really part of New Zealand, is the Cook Islands. And so they buried in the story that they're up to 97 or something like that. 97%, maybe I should fact check that and put it in this zone here. Fact check that they were up to 97% of their eligible population immunised. So they are just caning it. And I know they've had lots of tourists come in, lots from New Zealand, and I hope they've made lots of money, because I looked at the flights and they were horrendously expensive, which fair enough. But yeah, so they are on the good news vaccinations, probably the highest vaccination I've ever heard of. They really are up there with the the Israel, the Canadas of this world, which is good. Samoa has blasted past us. I think they were way past 60% last week of the single dose AstraZeneca. And so, I mean, it just shows when you prioritize something, because of course they had the measles thing not that long ago, And there are a few factors there which were a bit unique to Samoa, but their immunisation rate was just generally sagging, and it wasn't thought to be of a huge issue, but then it was. And so, yeah, that's really impressive. Really, really impressive. So, well done to Cooks. They seem to have a successful travel bubble. They seem to have the best rates of immunisations. We haven't heard of anyone getting saline or stealing saline or forgetting where the saline went, so they know that they've given the vaccination. So that's all good. And so now it's time. I mean, we're still in the thick of it. It's not going up exponentially, and I think we need to time our discussion about when we look back and do an autopsy of how we landed in the spot. And clearly, this travel bubble with Australia, namely New South Wales, who don't seem to respond the same as, say, Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia, was not the greatest move for our mostly unimmunised population. Now, we knew there were cases in Sydney, we knew they were Delta, and we kept the bubble going. We now know it came through on a red zone hot flight or whatever. It's a real high risk COVID flight, and yeah, it leaked through. Now, I don't think now is the time to really get into the weeds of all the things we did wrong, but I hope we don't forget that we have one of the most unimmunized populations in the world. For several reasons, we really have a fragile health system at the best of times, and this decision making was a little bit daft in my opinion. Now, what we're hearing now is that, the rules are different this time, it's Delta, so we have to go hard and go early. And I haven't seen any journalists throw it back to the government. But then why did you allow the travel bubble to continue as if it wasn't Delta? Because you knew it was Delta. So I think that the government could get really accused of talking outside, talking from both sides of their mouth. On one hand, they said, we should have kept the bubble going because that's what we thought was a good thing, even though we knew it was Delta. And now we're going, no, all the rules have changed. We've got to go really hard because it is Delta. So they either should do one or the other. Otherwise, you lift up the welcome mat really quick. That would be consistent with going really hard and early because it's Delta. But I think they have left themselves in a position where they haven't really made the right decision. Clearly, we know the experiment's been run that Delta's here, and it shouldn't have come in really, because we knew it was Delta heading our way, and now we know it's genomically linked to the place we knew it was highly likely to come in from. So I think they lifted up the mat for other places when they knew Delta was coming, particularly India, when it was called the India variant. It seems to have gotten worse since it's had the rebrand to the Delta. It seems to be getting more traction with that brand change. But when the Indian variant was around, they said, okay, no one from India is coming in. So they had done it before, but for some reason, I don't know who was making the misstep. I mean, there is a bit of me wondering, did the Sydney people say, oh yeah, we've got it under control, and be like, yeah, we don't really got it under control. Or maybe their version of under control is completely different to what we view as under control. So it is a tricky situation in that front, because I think at some point a hard autopsy does have to be made. I know from a huge number of people, nearly everyone you meet, particularly older people, they just think we don't need the borders that open at all. I mean, there's compassionate staff, and those people can stay in MIQ for a while, and we've done that for a long time, and it seems to have not led to big outbreaks. But the other movements don't seem to be high on our wish list in this period. So, yeah, food for thought. Anyway, okay, we should switch to something un-COVID related. And I think it must be some sort of anniversary for that Nirvana's Nevermind album. A lot of these big albums, always have an anniversary. Either this was the day they played this concert, this was the day this song came out. So you can basically, the record companies can milk these great pieces of art continuously every year. And I think it must be around the 30-year mark for some part of Nevermind. 1920, 1990, something like that. Maybe since Nirvana's first album. Anyway, the baby, I'll try and put a picture. The baby in the photo is, if I remember that picture correctly, and I would have seen it a million times, there's a gun in the swimming pool, a baby, and the baby is chasing the dollar. Anyway, I don't know much about the case, but it seems true to form in American style. That baby is now a grown-up chasing the dollar, and he's suing, I guess, the record company, because they would probably have money. I don't think he can sue individually. So he's suing the record company for his image. He said he's had a difficult life because of that album cover. And truth be told, I wouldn't discount that. I mean, I don't know who puts their baby in the water at 4 months, because it's quite an underwater shot with the gun and the dollar bill. I mean, presumably it was a crazy time. It was the 90s, so presumably his parents may not have passed the parenting competency test generally, but he said he's had a lot of problems, which he pins down to that album cover, which, I don't know, I guess that's someone else to prove. It does seem ironic that this suing, chasing the dollar in many respects, so that does seem like true to form. So maybe that was in his psyche at 4 months. I'm not sure. I mean, did anyone know he was the baby? I mean, you couldn't really recognize a baby at 4 months unless he somehow thinks so. But maybe he was carted around by his grunge-loving parents. That he was on the cover of the Nirvana album. That could really screw you up mentally, I'd say. Oh, I thought they were making the parking free now at level 4. There was a side Facebook discussion about parking being free, but does not look like it. Looks like that has not happened. So anyway, time to get a park and go into work. A little bit late, but hopefully no majors.